This is STN with Stairway to Nowhere with Nils and Laurits. We are going to be interviewing Esben Lash Rasmussen and Victor Maury today. Welcome to the studio.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Stairway to Nowhere.
So we have a really interesting setup here in the small studio. We have lights around us, and we have some more people in the studio. I forgot your names. I'm so sorry, but I think we could actually just have a little bit of around introducing all of us.
Sure.
Passing the mics around.
Sure. So yeah, I'm Victor. I was born in France, but lived most of my life in the United States. Recently moved to Copenhagen with my wife Mindy to join Esben at IO Interactive. In the past, I've worked at Riot Games mostly, on League of Legends, and then Arcane with Fortiche, and done a variety of other sort of freelance jobs here and there. But I'll pass it on to my good friend Esben.
Hi, I'm sitting eating candy. My name is Esben. And I was an animation workshop student back in a long time ago, 11 or 12 years ago, I think 2012, 13-ish. And since then, I have kind of been all over. Some months in Newcastle, then some years in Berlin, and then back to Copenhagen, and then LA for 5 years. And I knew a Victor before that. We were in the same book at one point, and he was like front page, and I was like, damn, this guy's really cool. And lo and behold, the first person I'm in contact with when I joined Riot is Victor giving me feedback. So that was really awesome. And then decided to move back to Denmark and figuring out what that looked like. And scooped my lovely wife and told her and convinced her that Copenhagen and Denmark was a nice place. And then, we took the leap of faith. And it was a little bit more bumpy, and we can go into some of that than expected, but it all worked out really well, and currently working in IO. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, one. Oh, okay.
So 3 floors.
All right. Hi.
Probably facing you. I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, something like this.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
okay.
Hi.
Hello.
My name is Mindy. I'm working as a character concept artist. I'm from LA. I moved here to Copenhagen with my husband, Victor. Victor Maury. Yeah. Hi, I'm Jackie. I am a graphic designer, brand designer, and I also do illustration on the side. Yeah, happy to be here.
My name is Laurits Rask, and I'm a third-year CG student at the animation workshop. So we have some a little bit in common there. And I do illustration for the most part, which is a little weird considering it's a CG school, but I stick it through.
That's nice. All right. And I'm Nils from Denmark here, and I'm also actually in the same class as Laurits. And now I started in the school thinking that I was into concept art or maybe even splash art, but now I've moved to film directing, and yeah, actually I thought maybe it could be a fun way to start to hear how you met each other.
I wanted to counterattack Esben's anecdote, because it's funny, I totally forget that story all the time, the Spectrum Rising Star Award. I did not feel cool at the time, by the way.
You were.
Well, yeah, so thank you. But it's funny because, sort of the flip side of that story is whenever Esben started freelancing with us in LA on splash art, this guy came in, young, handsome, dashing, super talented guy from Copenhagen, and he was just crushing it right out of the gates, like just super good. And our freelance process at the time, and maybe still, was a little shaky. I didn't appreciate sort of the level of communication was not the best, let's put it that way. But I was his sort of his freelance owner. Like I was the one who would relay the feedback to Esben. And I wasn't very happy with how scatterbrained it was, and I felt like we were giving him too much feedback and telling him to change too much stuff too late in the process. Classic stuff. Anyway, but he would always take it like a champ. He was just like, yeah, no problem. You know, he shows up on the video call, you got it. And then he would just do it, and then it was just fixed the next day. And then one day in review, it was me and the team in LA on a video call. We end the video call with Esben. Once again, we just give him a mountain of feedback, and he just takes all of it with a smile, like no problem. And once I think he's left, I'm like, I don't get this guy. Like, why is he such a pro, huh? Like, how come he can just take all this feedback? If that happened to me, like, I couldn't do that. And then Esben's like, hey, I'm still in the call. He was still.
Oh my
But I was
goodness.
just basically like, who is this guy who's like just so phenomenal? So I think the admiration went both ways is sort of the moral of that story.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. But then finally came to LA. I think probably one of the first times we hung out was like in figure drawing at Riot. And then, I mean, we became close friends, or fast friends, because the splash art team, I think Esben will speak to this as well, was just like a very special coming together of people from all around the world, lots of different backgrounds, but sort of unified with this like singular passion for just pushing the craft. It was a really magical experience. But I'll pass the mic. I just thought that story is the good counterpart to the Spectrum one.
Do you have something to?
It's very nice of him to say that. But I think yeah. At the time that I joined, I had been working for 6 More Vodka, so I have kind of been in training camp. So seems like I came fresh out of the gate, but I had some training grounds and breaking my neck and all that, and then finally decided to kind of stand on my own 2 feet. But yeah. And just a disclaimer, I am not from Copenhagen. I am from a little small town outside of Randers, about 45 minutes away from Viborg. So I'm pretty local to the environment here.
Yeah. I would love to hear, how is it to live in Copenhagen, and what do you think of this environment compared to LA that you've both spent a lot of time in?
Do you want to start with this one?
You go first, because you moved first.
Oh yeah, but okay. So I moved first, but I knew Copenhagen beforehand. I had about 2 years in Copenhagen before I moved to Los Angeles, and got a taste of Copenhagen there. So it was a little bit kind of returning to that. But LA was extremely high paced, very exciting, chaotic. I think is the best word to explain it. It has everything, and you just need to find it. It's kind of like my good friend Alvin described it as a goulash soup, which is that it has really nice pieces, but it's kind of spread all around in the soup, and you need to know kind of where the good pieces are. And it's very true. But I only found out when I moved back that because I stayed there for 5 years now, or almost 5 years. But I noticed when going back that almost like a 7 to 10% low passive anxiety was kind of disappeared. And that I think comes from like just being in an environment where there's always risk and things can always turn in a sense. There's a lot of volatility, and that's the thing that makes the place kind of buzzing and exciting. But it's hard to find peace when you're constantly in it. And yeah, it just came down to really just family values in the end. Wanted to be closer to my family, and I wanted to be a place where I could see myself grow old and start my own family eventually. So decided to take the leap and do that, and I have not looked back since. I love my life here in Denmark, and I think we're very fortunate to live in a country like this. It's a gem.
I think you're gonna find as we do this interview that there's a lot of overlapping elements between Esben and I. I think I'm constantly aware of like how many similarities our life paths have had, just being 2 guys from Europe who moved to the States for opportunities and like end up having similar careers, and then Esben moved back, and I think had a pretty large part in me ending up here, which is to say that I have like very similar views on LA. I don't think I've been gone long enough to look back fondly yet. I think I was pretty burnt out by the end of it, largely in part due to COVID. LA was not a fun city to be in during COVID because you had the same exorbitant rent, but you had none of the activities and sort of like fun things that make LA worth being in. And then followed by, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, and then the 10% passive stress thing is very real. Like, and I felt that every time I would go home to Austin or back to France, it just melts away, and you realize that you're in it. You're in that frequency all the time, and it's both exhilarating and exhausting. All of this to say, yeah, so I ended up leaving Riot February of 2022, and I had meticulously planned a whole year off, which to a lot of people sounds like a fairy tale, but I had basically been saving up for it and building up for it for about a decade. It was like one of my main dreams was to just be able to take this time off. And part of the rule for it was like, okay, don't take any work, just really take this time to like make personal work. And the first 3 months was like, okay, but you can also play some video games. So I tried that. I got bored of the video games after 1 month. And then on month 3, Esben calls me. He's like, hey, man, I have a really cool opportunity for you at IO. And I was like, don't even talk to me, bro. Like, I'm not working this year. No, maybe you didn't hear. And then he was like, yeah, but you're going to want to hear who's working on this project. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say.
You're not.
I'm not. But he basically, like, crafted the perfect laundry list of, like, all my childhood heroes, like, back to back. And then once I heard that, I was like, okay, I'll come check it out. So long story short, I ended up flying to Copenhagen. And prior to this, like, Copenhagen was not at all on my radar. I'm from France originally, so Scandinavia was like the north. I was like, it's up there. I don't know what's going on. Sounds cold. So I was like woefully uneducated about anything going on. And then as soon as I stepped foot in Copenhagen, I was like, wait, this place is perfect. I loved how organized it was, how clean. Everyone was so friendly. It's completely built, the infrastructure is completely built around the bicycle. So I was like, oh my God, this is like freedom from cars, which I hate cars. And LA is such a car culture, but it's also like the worst traffic in the world, famously. Anyway, so I'm sort of like awestruck by how beautiful the city is, how much I sort of vibe with what I perceive to be the cultural values and like the general equality I'm seeing, in contrast to, once again, LA, where you have the guy in his Ferrari driving past the homeless tents under the bridge, right? You're just confronted with a lot of really intense inequality all the time, which is its own sort of weird torture. Anyway, so I have a blast during the workshop, and I sort of fall in love with Copenhagen, and I'm bragging to Mindy about it. I'm like, wait, this place is crazy. Like, nobody knows about this. But really, I didn't know about it. I was like, it's like this secret perfect town. And then I fly back to the States after the workshop. And I think at the time, you guys might have even offered me a job. And I was like, no, man, I can't move to Denmark. That's so random. Makes no sense, you know. And I go back to the U.S., and I'm kind of forced to confront the contrast once again of like, this isn't right. Like, LA isn't right for me anymore. It was for a long time, you know, like I had a lot of good memories and growth opportunities. But I knew it wasn't right then for the next chapter of our lives. And so Mindy and I were searching. We visit New York, we visit Seattle, and none of it is quite like crossing off the boxes that we're looking for. And I think it was September of that year, Esben posts the job listing again on Instagram. It was still available. And at that moment, it just like sort of lined up in my head. I was like, wait, does this make more sense than I originally thought it did? And I think I responded with the 2 eyeballs emoji. I didn't even say anything. I was like, oh, you know, like, you still looking? And immediately Esben's like, bro, the job is yours if you apply. Like, do you want this? Like, we'll fly you out here. And I was like, whoa, like, this is crazy. And it actually made a lot of sense because I'm also trying to slowly make my way back to my family, which is in France. So it felt like a step in the right direction. IO offered to cover a lot of like spouse care and visa stuff. Like, I think if I had single-handedly tried to move from the States to France, the bureaucracy would have just stopped me dead in my tracks and I would have given up. So it felt like this was the right adventure on the path to like a larger arc that will probably see me end up back in France at an indeterminate time. But to answer the question, because this was super long-winded,
Pretty good.
Thank you. I adore Copenhagen. I've been on a high since I landed here 6 months ago. And it's very much what I thought and hoped it would be. And I find myself sometimes like lamenting not knowing about it sooner. I was like, oh, I could have just been like living this really nice life. But the reality of it is it's right for this chapter, and it might not have been right in the before.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm just super excited to be here. Very grateful, obviously, to Esben for all the monumental help in like crossing that threshold, like crossing the ocean into a new culture, into a new world. Really couldn't have done it without you. But it's been phenomenal. That's the short answer.
That's really amazing to hear. But you said that you were planning for 10 years to do this 1 year break. So did you actually finish that year, or was this part of stopping? After a few months.
That year was
how long did you go with your original plan?
Sure, that year was anything but what I expected. Basically, the day I left Riot, Russia invaded Ukraine. So already it just felt like that day, right? It happened, and I was like, "Whoa, the world feels way scarier than I imagined, and way more uncertain." Right? Like you can plan everything out in your head, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I just left the safety and the comfort of Riot, and I'm in this new world where, like, if back then especially, it just felt like anything could happen. It was just so scary." And then the inflation exploded, and the stock market crashed, or not crashed, but like started tanking. And there was like parts shortages and like all this stuff sort of compounded. Like some money stuff happened, and I was just like, whoa, it's all happening at the same time. So I ended up being very preoccupied, and I didn't have sort of the peace of mind to really explore the personal project in a way that I would have maybe hoped or dreamed. And that's when I realized that I hadn't, like, I wish I had planned it better. Like, visiting this school and learning about the artist residency, I'm like, wait, that's what I was imagining. Like, that's what I wanted, but I didn't know how to, like, formulate it. And instead I was just in my LA apartment, like, stressing out about bombs and money. And I was like, oh, I'm not making very good art right now. Like,
I guess it helps to explore the world, meet people that can
yeah. If I could do it over, like, I would have just come here, like 100%. Well, I mean, I say that, but then I like would have been away from Mindy. It's complicated. Yeah. It's always complicated.
But it's my impression that there's a lot of artist residencies all around the world, even in France. I've met here in Open Workshop. I've met a lot of people that have been to Angoulême.
Yeah.
With the artist residency there.
Right.
So that could be something for the future.
Right. And that's exciting to think about, because I think that's more in line with, I learned a lot about myself during that year. Like I thought I could just lock myself up in my room and just make my magnum opus, and it would just like flow out of me because it's time, and I've finally carved out the time. But I crave community. I crave a pleasant environment. I want to be inspired, right? All those things aren't going to happen just in your bedroom.
Yeah.
I think realistically. And I was able to like sort of poop out like a small fraction of what I imagined I would do when I came back from France, and I made a series called Petite.
Yes, I remember seeing that, and that was really inspiring. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
And was that in that period as well?
It was. It was coming home from the workshop. Basically, I went to Copenhagen for, was it 3 weeks?
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks?
2 or 3 weeks.
And then I took the opportunity to just hop over to my parents' place in France, since I was already on that side of the ocean, and spent 3 weeks there. And then the last day I went on my favorite hike behind my parents' place. And I was like, when I was a kid, I would always imagine these scenes of like little characters inhabiting the roots and the rivers and the rocks and just having their own civilizations. And I played a lot of Legos back then. So I was like, they would just like have their own kingdoms and stuff. And I was like, that I could just like show that to people, like what I see in my imagination. I could just draw that like now, right? Yeah. And so I took like hundreds of photos just along this hike at the, on the ground level, like squatted down with my iPhone. I was like, this iPhone's probably the best camera I've ever owned, right? So like, why not just took hundreds of photos and then went home and every day did one panel. And I was like, okay, this is like manageable scope. I can definitely knock one out every day. And it's like improvised storytelling. So I didn't have to like plan everything out ahead of time, because when I plan too much, I get bored because I feel like I already know the outcome.
Yeah.
So it had this perfect storm of like all the elements I needed. It was simple, authentic. It like reminded me of a place that I loved. It was improvised. It had storytelling. Like it just sort of scratched a lot of the itches I needed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't at all the project that I thought I was going to make. And so, you could make the analogy that I was like trying to force something. And instead what came out was what needed to come out and what felt right. And it wasn't what I expected, but I'm happy for that. It's just kind of, it was what it needed to be. I could talk more about it, but I feel like I've been hogging the mic.
Yes. Yeah.
I was wondering about like one thing about Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like that, like, because you're not from Copenhagen originally, but you're like from Randers, outside of Randers? Yeah. Because I'm from like a really small town, so sometimes when you come from like Viborg is kind of a big place to me, and Copenhagen is like a really big place, and LA is like ridiculous.
Yeah.
But so how do you feel about Copenhagen compared to LA? Like, do you have like that 7 to 10% of like anxiety kind of thing going on?
No. That basically melts away when I go anywhere but LA.
That's all right.
Yeah. And like Copenhagen's certainly biggest city in Denmark, but compared to LA, it's not
Right.
anywhere near that stressful.
It's a suburb, basically.
No, I mean, I wouldn't call it a suburb because it has culture, it has beauty, it has character. Like, there's this show that Esben put me on. I'm not gonna get too far into it, but like, it's basically at one point this Italian guy is in LA and he's like, the city has no center, and I was like, I started just cracking up because it's just so true. It's that soup metaphor. It's like LA is everything and nothing. You know what I mean? Copenhagen knows what it is, and it's more distinct and but it's not as stressful.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
So your tip to avoid culture shock is just live in LA, and then you'll never have culture shock again.
No, you'll have culture shock no matter where you go.
Yo, try India.
Yeah, that's the thing where it's like, but I think it's that sort of thing of like, as a student or a young person too, you're testing the boundaries, and you're kind of a little bit more open to going where the world and opportunities take you. So for me, right, I come from a little village of 450 people, and then it started out with here, right? I had a gymnasium education, and it went here. I worked in a kindergarten first, and then it came here. And then that became Newcastle for 2 months. So I took the first airplane ride when I was 21 to Newcastle, and everything went wrong on that that trip. Anyway, the Newcastle was really nice, but the flight was horrible.
Okay.
Anyway, so so came back, finished the last year of school, went to Berlin. Berlin was very large compared to Viborg and Randers, right? And then after Berlin, I was so burned out, and I felt like this darkness had like touched my soul in a sense. It sounds weird, but that was really the feeling of like, I felt like I went in like a ray of sunshine, like very happy-go-lucky, and I came out and I was like, there's a touch of corruption almost.
Did that have anything to do with what you were doing, like with the 6 More vodka?
No, not at all. I think it was just environment was very different from anything that I had, and it was a lot more competitive, and it was a lot more very intense. Like it's hard to explain, but it was very intense, and I learned a shit ton. We have this saying from 6 More where it's like, you swim faster when you're swimming with sharks, right. And I was swimming with sharks there. And I was learning a ton, and that was the real reward. But it also had a price. So afterwards, I took all the money that I have saved up, which was about 20,000 Danish kroners, and I blew it on a trip to Nepal and Tibet, because I was like, I need to feel myself again. I felt like I was kind of being a bit of a shell. So I took 2 months. in Nepal and Tibet. So mostly in Nepal, and yeah, went around there and was with a group, and we went up to Everest Base Camp for a 19-day trek. We didn't go to the top. We went to base camp, which is the first stop. Still tall, but or high up, but yeah. And then we went to Tibet. We were the only tourists at that point of time. We were allowed in half an hour before our flight was going there. Was when the Chinese authorities approved our visa.
Oh.
So we were in the airport and we were like, "Are we going or not?" And then they're like, "You're going, okay." And we were the only group that was allowed in at that time, and it was where there's a ritual in Lhasa, which is their capital. They have a palace of 1,001 rooms, and then they walk around this palace, and they go down and lay down on the ground, back up, go around, lay down on the ground, and here's this group of, I think we were like 10 or 11 Danish people, blonde, tall hair, that stuff, and they're just like, what the fuck? But they were amazing. They were really wonderful, and took really good care of us and everything. But came back after that, and help start a studio in Copenhagen.
Artwork.
Yeah, artwork studio. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So did you accomplish what you kind of? I don't know if you had like a goal for Nepal. Like, did you find something there that you needed?
Yes, I think so. But it was a little bit the same thing of like, you said how you think that this is gonna be this world-changing thing, but no. But then I remember one of the biggest experiences was on my way to, we were trekking to Everest Base Camp, and it was the 8th of March, 2015, and I turned 25. And I had written an email to myself from back when I was when I was in school, last year of school. So there's this website that's called send an email to myself from the past or future or something.
Like a time machine thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I wrote a mail to myself at that time saying, "Hey Esben, you're now 25. Congratulations. I hope that you're going out and living instead of working so hard." And I got that when on my birthday in a tent on my way trekking up to Everest. And I would just remember smiling. I was like, because it was more just like I'm staying true to what my dreams and goals are, and it's okay to like to kind of lower the gear, because I think with my structure in the brain sometimes have been very performance heavy and probably still is.
Right.
But it's nice to then take that foot off the speeder and remember to live and remember to be here, and that art is not everything. So,
yeah, I think we can definitely all get caught up in like the grind set, like too much, and like that's a whole toxic thing.
Now that we're talking about this grind set or something, it's because I've been like after first year into second year, I have personally like focused extremely like a lot on painting, waking up at 5, doing a set of studies at a timer and all this, and that has worked really well for me sometimes. But then I also found myself looking back at a period of time like, whoa, I went into a robot mode. I forgot to be a human. Then I just found, now for me, I learn a lot more from taking a lot of breaks, playing music, coming back to it. But now I'm also finding myself just following the fun, doing other stuff that interests me more, maybe. But I would love to hear about your thoughts on this, and also actually like concretely, what did you do if we talk about this grind mindset?
There's a lot to dive in here. This is a good thing, also for students, I think.
Yeah, and I think we'll have a pretty different answer, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think one thing too is there's not like there's never like one way of doing it. It really depends on how you are as as a person too, and personality and all that. So it differs from person to person. I think we are somewhere between the grind, which is like that you're pushing, right? And then there's the other thing, which is also a little bit of the procrastination and relaxing. But there's that sort of the midder part, right? So you have the grind, which is like you're pushing. Dark side of that one is the over burned out and just unhealthy habits. But there is a place where you're pushing in a healthy place. You're right on that edge of your comfort zone, and it's hard, but you're still engaged in it. Then there's sort of the neutral, and then you have the relaxing state, right, where you're just having fun, but you're maybe not pushing so much. You're staying in a comfort zone. You're repeating the same thing that you know over and over again. You don't experience the growth that you maybe want to see. And then there's the procrastination, which is sort of the dark side of inaction. So you have action, inaction, and then the two dark sides of that. And it's the balance. It's never one thing completely. And I think it's like when you have a little bit of foot on the speeder, you can do that for some time, but you need to know too that you need to also take it off at some point and recover, and kind of come back to the flame, if that makes sense. A bit of like why you did it in the first place and the fun. And I think that it's consistent action with a bit of fun, if that makes sense, because the fun and the joy of that fun is the thing that makes you come back to it over and over again, because consistency will beat any sort of sprint ever. Consistency is really the name of the game, and it's really been like the main thing that I'm just focusing on. Is like I will put in an hour if that's all I have for a day, or 10 minutes if that's all I can give that day, because then that's my 100% for that day. But I would just try to kind of like do small chunks and break it up over time. And in my youth, I was leaning heavy into the grind. And I think I'm a bit of that structure. I really love that. I'm very competitive in my nature. So I get a kick out of that in that sense, but some people don't. It really depends on where you are. But it's very much like going to the gym. If I go to the gym and I'm working out for 24 hours straight, lifting all the hair, like I'm gonna be wrecked. You're not gonna be stronger or be bigger or whatever the next days. It takes time, so it's much better to take all that workload and you really spread it out over time. But the thing is, and I think one of the things that we often talk about is when people push too hard and the grind mindset. And I sometimes hear that there's this. I know there's groups of people that see it in a positive light, and there are groups of people that see it in a negative light, and it has that shadow, just like anything has. But I think that it's important also to look at the other side, which is there are people that also then don't push themselves hard enough. They're not adding that extra weight. They're not the progressive overloading, as it's called in weightlifting. That sort of thing of like you're not pushing your boundaries. And it's kind of like the belief of you can do it, or needing a little bit of a push or a little bit of like that kick. And it can be it can be scary, and it can be afraid. But I think the best advice I found on that was do it scared.
I was just wondering, like for students listening now, pushing hard, do you think that you do you regret the way you approached it? Would it have been better to take it slower and get to that level later in your life? Or what would you have done differently? Even though it's an impossible question.
I get what you're saying. I wouldn't have done anything differently. But I think also with the, when I say that like a touch of darkness is, I think for most of my life I lived in Denmark. I've been very happy-go-lucky. Everybody everywhere I went was always super nice. Now I come into the real world and I'm kind of like this little puppy in a sense, and I'm getting to meet people from all over the place, and I'm getting to see some darker sides of humanity, and Berlin has some of those darker sides too, and that was new for me. So I'm like, oh my god, so this is a lot in that sense. Okay. I was just like a little bit of a unknowing country boy, and LA definitely did that big time for me. and met and got to work with all kinds of different people, all kinds of different stories and personalities. But with the grind thing, I couldn't have done it any other way. And despite it not being fun and being really hard and burning out during some of that time, and being depressed, I was pretty depressed along the end time of that. For me, I needed that in a sense, like, and I think it goes a little bit into, and I could be totally wrong, and I think it's really good that we have Victor here, because he will cover some of the sides that I'm not going to be able to explain with words, maybe because there's so many factors of it. But for me, I needed to know where my boundaries were, and I need to burn out in order to know, like, now I pushed too far. Okay, I need to recover, recuperate. There's a price in that when you're recovering because you burned out. And that takes time and it's costly, but you do that young, while you're young, so you know where some of those boundaries are and you're pushing your boundaries. And I think I probably burned out 2 or 3 times throughout my life. Pretty like hard burnout. But I also think that if I didn't do that, I wouldn't know necessarily where that boundary is and how hard I can sometimes push to.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that I did it, and I knew too that that time wasn't for the money. I was not paid very well.
No.
But I learned a ton, and it was for the knowledge. So yeah.
And it seemed that you have found a lot more balance today from talking to you now. I'm not sure actually, but it sounds that you have found your boundaries and you're working within that now.
It's a constant balance, I think. I think my wife can speak to it, but I think it's much more balanced for sure. But my plan was always that push the throttle in my 20s and then start to let go around 30s. And not still have a little bit of gas and all that, but take it a little bit off. Like, okay, now it's other things, value change, right? Like, okay, it's not all about career. Other things are starting to come into the picture now. Still trying to maintain some of the things there, but I can't go 100% on career all the time. I don't want to die looking back and just having worked.
Yeah.
I want to be able to be on the deathbed and look back and say, like, I had a good life, had a good run, and I don't think that nobody, when they lay there in the end of their life, think about, oh, I'm so happy I painted that splash, or like nobody's gonna do that. But they will think about. I wish I spent more time, with the people they love and the people that they care for. I think that's really what it comes down to, is relationships. I think all of your best memories come from it. I think all your worst memories come from it. But I think that's really where it comes from, is relationships and also the time spent.
There is the splash art, but then there's also all those rings in the water that has created, like, for us, inspiring us to seek our dreams, and I can imagine thousands of other people in the world. So yeah, there is that, like, thing that's also, in a weird way, it's related to the work, but it's somehow not the work. It's like quite beautiful and relations in a way, even though it's not a close relation.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it's a huge privilege for us to be able to have done that and be part of that history, in a sense, because Victor and I didn't grow up with we want to be splash artists. There was no such thing back then. So we were just like, I mean, for me, I was like, I loved Dota, and I saw like Suke's like paintings of back in the Dota 2 Warcraft 3 mod days. And I saw those and like, whoa, those are crazy. But I always loved illustration, and then I just found like I'll figure my way through, and then that kind of started to become a thing. But you were like Magic the Gathering, and cover that, and then I want to hear your thoughts on
the grind. Yeah, because I have a pretty big answer if it's not going backwards too much.
No, we want to go backwards.
Yeah.
We jump.
And it's funny to think too, just because, I mean, back then it was kind of different. You didn't have Instagram and ArtStation and, to a large degree, the internet. So like, my life discovering the things I loved was breadcrumbs, right? It was my my aunt's friend accidentally showing me Princess Mononoke. It was me finding a bookmark with Art of Brahm on it and not knowing who the hell that was. It was the one book in Barnes & Noble that had the Art of Final Fantasy that was different from every other book. Really just breadcrumbs. I want to jump into my answer, but I have to pee. Is that cool? Real quick.
Go for it.
I'm actually really excited to answer this question because I think it's something that's very core to my journey. As a disclaimer, I think the healthy answer is sort of or it's not necessarily boring, but the healthy answer is the workout analogy. It's like slow and steady wins the race, put in your reps, like be consistent, be diligent. And the reason I'm excited to answer this is because that was not my path. At least it's not what I thought my path was. I think my story is the story of someone who was a little delusional in the sense that I grew up with a sort of like shonen mentality. I consumed a lot of manga as a child. So in a shonen, you have a main character who wants to be the best, and through sheer force of will and passion, they have to. They defeat every opponent one by one just because they love it so much. And I thought that was me. I thought I was the main character. I thought I was the one. I was like going to be the best. And so it becomes this question of I sort of chanced into the right habits in the wrong way, or like in a backwards way. There's this YouTube video I saw that talks about habits, and it says if you want to develop good habits, start with identity. What that means is if you say, I am someone who works out, right? That means that when it comes time to work out, there's no yes or no about it. You're like, no, I'm someone who works out, so I'm going to put on my shoes and go to the gym. That's what people who work out do. They work out, right? You start with identity instead of with the action itself, because when you think about the action, that's when you start getting into words like grind set. You're like, oh, I'm going to have to grind some reps. It's like, no, it's not about the reps. Like, you work out. You're a strong person. Like, you work out. That's what you do. And so that was what I thought as a kid. I was like, I'm an artist. Not only that, I'm going to be the best artist. So what does the best artist do? He's going to seek knowledge, and he's going to seek greater and greater opponents and defeat them one by one. And that doesn't make it any easier, because inevitably you run up against walls and tons of frustration and, like, to be honest, like self-loathing and depression, like anything anybody else goes through. But the reason you're so frustrated is because it's inconsistent with your idea of your identity. You're like, but I'm the best. Like, why can't I do this? But it never becomes a question of like, can I do this? It's like, how will I do this? I'm going to figure this out because that's my destiny or whatever, you know what I mean? And so, that came with its pros and cons. I think I was very dogmatic and fanatical in that. And part of the reason I developed that identity in the first place was because I was like lacking in other areas of my life, right? Like if I couldn't connect with people socially in the way that normal people do, or if I didn't like my self-image, then being an artist was all I had. And so I held on to it very tightly and with a lot of passion, because without it, I would just be obliterated. I would be nothing. And there's no greater fear than being nothing, right? And so I think I sort of subconsciously carried that like pretty long, like into my early 20s. And what that meant was when I got to school, I remember this very clearly. When I got to Ringling College of Art and Design in Florida, the first week, people were coming out of high school and they were excited, like, oh my God, we're in college, like, let's party, let's make some new friends, like, blah, blah, blah. For me, it's like I immediately found the senior who was the best artist, which at the time was Andrew Theo. Nice. And I was like, I'm taking that motherfucker down. Give me 2 weeks, right? Like, I'm going to be as good as him, and then who's next? You know what I mean? And so I tried to befriend him. I tried to learn from him. I went to all the demos. I went to the library. I checked out all the tutorials, and I just got to work, right? But it wasn't work because it was just me fulfilling my identity and my stated purpose, right? It was passion. It was just like, oh, I want my stuff to look like that, and you know how to do that. I'm just gonna take that from your brain, like give it to me. You know what I mean? Like I'm hungry for this stuff. That was always my superpower, is I was a sponge and I had tremendous toxic ego about like identifying as being the best, but I had no ego in terms of like, no shame in asking questions. Do you know what I mean? Like I was like, if you know how to do the thing that I want to know how to do, then I will ask you and I will take it for myself. And that sort of shamelessness and like hunger allowed me to at least craft a path that I could be proud of. Because I think something also that happens when you're an artist is you're like, you want to improve, quote unquote. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? It's like, I wanted to make art that I liked. So I was always guided by what I liked, and it made me very discerning. What I mean by that is like, go learn from the people I wanted to learn from and whose art I wanted to look like. I didn't go learn from a guy that I didn't like his work or didn't respect him. Not out of meanness, but just like having a very clear compass is like, okay, I think this is good and I want my stuff to be good so it'll look like this. And I don't so much care about this. So I had blinders on, which helps you focus and helps you grow faster, I think. And I was very sort of stubborn and specific about what I didn't want to do. So as soon as I hit 3D, I was like, nope, skip. It's like, obviously 3D is an amazing tool. Obviously my art would be better if I learned some 3D, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just like, no, I don't care. I care about this. And it wasn't until much, much later that I ended up watching Ping Pong, the anime. I don't know if you guys have seen it. No. Absolutely recommend it. Really phenomenal. It's sort of this meditation on like a bunch of kids playing ping pong, but they all come at it from a different place. One of them is that grind set kid. He's like, I'm going to put in the reps and I'm going to be the best. And it's hard work, but if I work harder than everybody else, I'll just pummel them into the ground. One of them is like the prodigy. He's like the genius, but he's like, he has no motivation. Like he's the best, but they can't get him to like train and push himself. So he falls off. And then the third one is sort of that shonen character of like, he just fucking loves ping pong more than anybody else. And so he's just playing for fun. And by virtue of playing for fun so hard every day, he's like putting in the reps like everybody else, but he doesn't even know it because he's just having so much fun. And there's this perfect metaphor at this one point in ping pong between the kid who loves it and the grind set guy, where the grind set guy, they do these like sort of visual metaphors. He's like climbing this mountain. And he's like, I'll be the best. I'll climb the mountain. No one else can like survive this mountain. And the guy who loves it flies by him. Do you know what I mean? He flies. He's not climbing. He's not sweating. He's just floating. And that was like, that's how I felt a lot of the time when I was doing art. It's like, I'm not ever going to let myself think about this as if it's just supposed to be hard. I want to just glide. Yeah. And part of it too was like feeding into my narrative of like appearing cool is like, just make it look effortless. I love when it looks effortless, even though it's not, even though I'm like behind closed doors, I'm the most frustrated of anybody. It's like when I do it in front of you, it's going to look like, whew. While you're sweating, I'm just going to coast.
I think this flowing analogy is really great because something I'm talking a lot with my co-students about is like, oh, so what do you want to do? And many people have no idea what they want to do, or at my age, you know, in any education. But maybe that's a good, like, it could be a good guidance, like, oh, if I don't fly here, maybe it's actually something else I should do. But then it's interesting to hear your different stories because what Esben said is like, it sounded like you climbed and that also worked out. So yeah, I want to hear.
Yeah, I think it's also like, it's interesting too because there's a thing in The Last Dance with Michael Jordan where he noted, I think he says that he noticed when players say, I have to go train, or they say, I have to go play basketball. I think that's the mindset. Are you going to play because you love it, right? Or are you doing a chore? Same thing for drawing. Like, are you enjoying it, or are you just doing it because you feel like you have to? Has this become work, or is there still enjoyment in it? And I think that's the key. And I think that's the key long-term too, right? Is to have fun while doing it. So yes, I think I was grindy, but I was loving and that's the thing with the personality too. It's like, for me, that was love. Like, I love being in that space, and I love pushing those boundaries. I'm a Warwick player, so yeah. And I love being in the forefront. I love taking those risks. I like jumping in and initiating and all that. That's there's something in me that just sings. I will never be an 80 carry, never. So,
That's very apt.
Yeah.
But so just to close off this arc or this story is, as my mental health improved and as my maturity improved, and my understanding of the world and my ability to participate in reality in other ways than through my art, which is previously the only way I felt like I could connect. As those things improved, my drive lessened to do art, because under that sort of playfulness and all that stuff, there was also a lot of anxiety and a lot of need to succeed, because I felt like it was my only avenue into reality and into relationships. And so I just wanted to bring that up because that's something I really struggled with for a while, going back to that idea of identity. It's like, okay, here I am in my late 20s, and all of a sudden I'm like, I feel so well adjusted that I don't want to like prove myself to you anymore. And I want to go hang out with my girlfriend or take a day off or something like that. And that, I think it very much ties into what Esben was saying about your values changing, but it was really hard to let go, because for the longest time I was like, in my own head and maybe in the heads of certain people, I was like, I'm the chosen one, like I'm going to be the best. And then after a while I was like, actually that's no longer me. And accepting the death of that old identity took a long time and was very difficult. But what helped me was coming up with a new identity. And the way I describe it now is like, I'm a hobbit who went and pretended he was a knight or a wizard, like a really impressive knight or a wizard for a while, put on a good show, and now I want to go back to the Shire and like have some bacon. Do you know what I'm saying? It was a fun game, and I'm going to keep doing it to a certain extent, but underneath all of those grandiose ideas, like I know who I am. I'm a guy who goes on that hike and imagines little characters in the mushrooms. Like, let's be honest, I'm not this like crazy, like I am ambitious, I am competitive. I wouldn't be where I am today without those things, but I'm not that extreme. I'm actually like, I enjoy resting, and I enjoy just like dozing off and doing nothing. Like, it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
And growing into that has felt so good, but initially it felt so scary, because it feels like the you think you are is slipping away, or like you're taking your foot off the gas, or like you're not trying hard enough, like all the narratives that you can build up. But I don't know, whenever I was able to quiet the mental chatter, I realized that the balance I had crafted for myself was authentic to my heart. And that sounds kind of hokey and stuff, but it's just like, it rings true. Like, the frequency is correct. And I want to honor that, and I want to be grateful to myself for the wisdom to like honor my correct frequency, instead of like going on some quest that is not mine to go on, if that makes sense.
It's you've both mentioned something about like mental health, depression, some little bit like that, and we talked a little bit about yesterday about infusing your personality into your work. And sometimes I find that if I'm trying to do like some Nami splash or something that I'm not in,
it's not you.
No, exactly, and
So
it's never. I tried to do like a Syndra thing some months ago. It's like, or no, a year ago, but it's just never. I couldn't. It's just like pushing something uphill that I can't carry. Like, it's not mine to carry. And then I've also like struggled with depression some in my life, and in those times there's like, you can either put that into your work, or you can also like not work if that's what you need. And it's something I've seen from your work a lot, that I love seeing it, even though it's kind of like, it's melancholic, but it's very real. And you're very open with that. Is that something that's really, was that easy to be open and showing that off?
I wear my emotions on my sleeve,
yeah.
And I have no interest in hiding anything, just because that's real. Like, that's what I'm going through, right? And I'm pretty sure it's what a lot of people go through. And I actually do think it's beautiful when it's transmuted into art, right? And talking about identity, like, there was times when I was scared that the only time I could make good art is if I was sad, which I can say right now is like total bullshit. But it just felt like there was a rawness there that I couldn't achieve otherwise. Like, when I'm really sad, I'm going to make this amazing drawing. But when I'm really happy, maybe I don't feel like drawing. You know what I mean? Like if I'm really happy, maybe I'm like outside riding my bike and like eating Nutella. Like, but when I'm really sad, like I'm in my room and I'm tortured and I need to get this out and nobody understands and there's, I have to get it down on paper. So it's like in retrospect, those are some of my favorite things I've ever made because they're real. But I've been as delusional as to think that I needed to somehow be depressed in order to make good work. But I think this is something Esben talks about is like the Neil Gaiman speech. What is it called? Make good art, right? If you're happy, if you're sad, if you got laid off, if you're on top of the world,
make good art,
right? And that speaks to consistency, right? Whatever you're going through, like that's your art. Your life is your art in a way. That's my favorite way to live it, by the way, is just to harmonize the two and to make them be the same thing as much as I can. I know some people like to separate it out, like really cleanly, like they are like an engineer, a technician, almost a surgeon. They clock in, they do the work, and it's amazing, and then they clock out. For me, I love and I need to weave my real life and my real emotions into the work because it's the only way I know how to make it real and interesting to myself. And if it's not interesting to me, like I can't make it. I'll like throw up.
It's also very akin to what you said yesterday about like if you're inspired by something that happened off the street and you just take that, you pluck it and place it right into your work, that's real. Yeah. And that's interesting. And when you try and like what do you call it? Like when you try and imagine something that you think is real, it's never really authentic.
Yeah. It's like second degree.
Yes.
And I mean there's power in archetypes. There's power in like things we've seen before, fundamentals, shape language, all that stuff. But if it's not yours, to me, it can easily become stereotype or like you've seen it before, or it's just missing that spark. It gets you 90% of the way there, but it's just missing the spark, the soul for me. Yeah.
I think that it also goes a little bit into the self-expression of things, which is also like you were mentioning, like when you were a kid too, and kind of growing up, it was the avenue for you to go in and be in the world and kind of be there. And I think that's the thing where like we're having all these feelings and we're growing up and we're trying to understand what the fuck is it that I'm experiencing. And I think that's the thing with music or any sort of art. It's a self-expression. You're trying to capture something that's within you. You're trying to communicate. And I think that's what the visual, at least what we're in, is like when it's done really well, it does that, right? It has a piece of your soul in there. And then there's also the technical thing, which is like how well you're written. But if you do it very well technically, but it's not saying anything, it lacks that sort of thing. It's just like, oh, this is really, really pretty. And then you just move on because there's no resonance. And I think it goes into a little bit also like the problematics of social media, which is that you see a big number or something like that, and you're like, oh wow, that's what success looks like, is this big numbers. But it's not, because it's like if you have 10,000 people that looked at your piece, double clicked and scrolled, and that was it, and they forgot it like 2 seconds later. Or you have 3 people where they're just like, this is me, and they're like, they take it, they put it on their screensaver. That's like the deep resonance, right? So it's like, and there's not like a right or wrong, but I think it's just right now there seems to be still a lot of focus on the width of audience and not so much the depth of audience and that resonance of how deep that can connect to people. I think that's where the meaningful aspect of it sometimes is forgotten or looked away from.
Yeah, I think broadly speaking, social media has the wrong incentives. I've become allergic to Instagram. I mean, anybody who visits my profile will notice that I haven't posted art in 2 or 3 years. Part of that is it's NDA, but another part of that is like anytime I feel like I'm doing something for Instagram, I like want to throw up in my mouth. Like I just hate the gravitational pull of the algorithm. And it used to be where it's like that was the platform for you to share. That's what I want from social media. I want it to be my little stage where I can put up my wares and people can come check it out and browse, right? I don't want it to be gamified. I don't want to get paid. I don't want to talk to a social media expert, Meta. And so I just like, I kind of hate it, and I'm kind of waiting for like the next most neutral platform to come out. That being said, even the people who gamify social media, I love that. I don't love it, but it's a part of it. It's like, those are characters too. Like I have friends who have huge audiences, like my friend Tim Von Ruden or Ross Draws or my friend James. And actually meeting those guys has helped me know where I'm at, because I was certainly playing the game at one point, like not very hard because again, I just kind of hate the whole premise, but everybody wants the big number at some point, especially when you're younger and trying to prove yourself. So, you know, I gave it a couple tries here and there, like a month where I'm like, I'll post every day and like try to do the thing, whatever. But then meeting those guys, I'm like, oh no, like that's what they're doing. And I love that for them, and I don't need to do that. Like, I think going out and meeting different types of artists, like, and there's other artists, like Esben will speak to this too, where like you've never heard of them and they're the best artists you've ever seen.
And have like 20 followers on Instagram.
Yeah. Nobody fucking knows, and they paint circles around any splash artist. You know what I mean? Like, so everything is out there. Make the world your own, make your journey your own, make your experience your own. Don't worry too much about all that stuff. Obviously, if you're trying to sell prints, like get as many followers as you can. If you're trying to do a Kickstarter, there's reasons to try to do it, but like it has to make sense for your business or for your something else. Don't make it so that you're like filling a traumatic black hole of not getting attention as a child. Like go to therapy. It's much faster than trying to grow a following on Instagram, right?
If you look at the industry today, and if you could change something, what would you change? If you had the power to just change the whole industry a little bit.
Sure. I'll answer it very much at face value, because if I'm being honest, I'm not keeping track of the industry very closely. There was a time when where I could tell you every artist's name, every piece they'd ever made, like what they're up to, which workshops they're going into, because I was just like, it was my whole world. And just for context, like where I'm at now, I've taken a much, much smaller and more intimate approach to my life, where I think in terms of like immediate circle or community. And I've done that for not only art reasons, but also because like global news is depressing and climate change is depressing. And there's many things that are outside my control that it would be things to annihilate me mentally. And so my antidote to that is just, I will affect the things that I can in my own life, right? So just a bit of context. That being said, if I could change anything in the industry, here's what it would be. I think it'd be really cool if one of my favorite things about art is like how autobiographical art is. If you give me a painting from someone, I can tell you about that person, whether it's the fact that they're like trying to prove themselves and making really constipated, soulless splash art, or whether they're really passionate. Like for Esben, not to grill you, bro,
Go for it.
or put you on the spot, it's like
Go for it.
Esben has an exuberance.
Sorry, what is that?
It's like a life, like a energy to his work. It's always going to be full of life. It's going to be quite confident. It's going to be very appealing. It's going to be very high level, and it's going to be 10 to 20% reckless. Like when you observe it a little closer, you're like, wait, what's this? Like he did this part like really fast. Like it's kind of a mess actually. Like someone's gonna have to clean up this mess. But you would never notice the mess because you're having so much fun with the whole image. And I'm only saying that because like I compare myself to my peers, right? Or like my friend Evan, their work is going to be like extremely dense, like molasses, right? Like rich, just so rich with meaning and thought and layering. But it's almost like heavy. It's almost like relax. Like this is like, it's sucking me in, but it's also like almost too much, right? And again, I'm only making these judgments in relation to myself, right? And Esben and Evan are two of my favorite artists. That's why I can say that. But it's like art is autobiographical. And if you look at mine, it's I would argue that it's sort of that thing I was saying where it looks effortless, but really I'm like kind of frustrated and angry underneath. And you're like, okay, this guy like could probably like learn how to draw a little bit better, and then he wouldn't be so frustrated. But anyway, so we all have that. So back to the industry thing. I would love if instead of a studio trying to like unify everybody's style into one thing, they would let more of that out because it's fascinating. And when those things clash against each other, it's so rich with expression that I think it actually like fulfills some of the goals that companies have without knowing it. Like something that recently happened in Gundam, The Witch from Mercury, because I'm having an anime renaissance phase in my life right now, is they had different designers design different mech suits for the show that belong to different companies. So as part of the plot, you have these like 4 corporations that make mech suits. And instead of having one guy design 4 different companies' mech suits, they had 4 different artists design 4 different companies' mech suits. So they clearly have their own design language. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I feel like that could be put into a lot more games. Like, let's say you have different cultures, have a different artist design every different culture. And then they're just naturally going to feel different, right? And obviously you need to have artists that are within the ballpark of each other so it's stylistically coherent and doesn't just completely fall apart. But instead of like ironing out everything and having everybody draw over each other's shit, just like let some of that through more and take advantage of the fact that artists have these lived experiences that they can bring to bear to like fully form like a culture or a character or a world, and then put all those worlds in the same game, and that variety will mimic the real world. The real world is made of places and people that were made by different circumstances. Does that make sense, or am I like too abstract here? No. Yeah. So I would love to see that.
That's a really good answer. It's a big, I don't know. I think it goes a little bit into it, but I think for me, the last 4 or 5 years, I've been looking deeper into finance and economics. And I think for me, it goes a little bit into that. I think we're starting to move into, so it's not really our industry. I think it's much wider, but I think it goes a little bit into that right now. Companies are having a lot of incentives to kind of lead where markets go. I would love the markets to be a bit more driven by people again, and not by bigger agents. So yeah, I would love to again have more neutral grounds where people can come and they can set up their own little places where it's not driven by a big incentive of reels or whatever the fuck is being implemented for the algorithm, so that the thing could grow bigger, and like the less control and more freedom to the people in that sense. I know it sounds really cheesy, but I do think we are at that point where it's becoming very critical, especially when it comes to data and people's privacy and surveillance and all that stuff. So sorry, I'm going a little bit dark, but that's truly where I am. Yeah. I think it's interesting too with that like that sort of environment that we're in, to see how to navigate it and move it and celebrate each other's differences and all that. I think some of that has been going through, but I remember my dad told me too that everybody's different, and it's the best thing that we have because we don't know what the future will bring for us. And having everybody being a bit different shows that whatever the future has in store for us is that we most likely will have somebody who has a strength in whatever is being thrown at us, because it's a dynamic environment that always changes. So we'll always need different qualities at different times. And that's why we have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Power Rangers and all that. Everybody has a moment that they shine and a moment where they don't. And I think we need to be able to lean on each other for that as we move forward. So, yeah.
We all agreed that we tried not to talk too much about AI or darkness.
Let's not
stuff.
go there.
But one
okay.
like one super short thing we could go with it is something I've been thinking a lot about is like what is a mindset we could artists could have around art and having living in a world where AI is becoming a thing. Because, for example, I'm teaching kids drawing in a youth school down here in Viborg, and some of them said to me, like they are between 13 years old and 18, they were like, why should I learn to draw? So what is something I could tell maybe to a 15-year-old wanting to start to draw? Like, what is a good mindset to have about this, in your opinion? And maybe we could try it and keep it short because we're also low on time.
Okay.
So if you have some thought on that.
Can I try one? I think humans have been drawing almost from this, like from our very, very early days. There's always been artists among in the human race that had the need to express themselves through mark making, or music, or whatever that is. And I think it's a core thing for us. And I think for some people, it's not really it's not a choice. It's literally in their DNA, where it's like they need to express themselves creatively, and it can come out in many ways: cooking, music, dance, a lot of ways that the creativity can come out, and drawing is one of them too. I think drawing is incredibly important for us too, because it's a conversation with yourself, in a sense. Like when you're sitting with a piece of paper, you have an idea of what's going to be on that piece of paper, but that's not how it goes. You put down a mark, and that gives you a signal back, and then you put down a new mark, and then that always changes. The signal that's coming back is kind of like what's appearing, and I don't know what that necessarily is, but you're having a conversation with something within you, and you're self-discovering yourself within the process of this activity. And again, I don't care if it's cooking or dancing, but there's that element of self-discovery, and I think that whether you want to do it as a job or not, I think that there's value there. And I think it's sad to see, and I understand where some kids are getting that from, where like, why even do this? I can just make the computer do it. But I do think that we're losing something extremely valuable in the process. Yeah.
I think that's the perfect answer, actually. Draw because you need to. And if you don't need to, then yeah, click the button, get an image, have fun, like play slots. But it's also like something that people might not consider when starting out, is that if you become an artist, it becomes a way of seeing the world. For lack of a better term, like a filter for reality, right? An engineer seeing the world might see math everywhere. He might see the physics of how something attaches to something else or carries the weight of something else, or how fast it's going and how that's possible, right? In a way that I might never understand. When I look around and see the world, I see shapes, colors, values, edges, poetry. And that's just because I have 3 decades of trying to see the world that way. I've trained that muscle. And now it's built into my cyborg eyeballs, right? And that has nothing to do with like creating an asset for a company. That's just how I wake up and live my life when I'm going to the grocery store, when I'm stuck in traffic. Like, it doesn't matter. It's how I interface with reality. It goes deeper than my craft or my career or my job or anything like that. That being said, it's I think the thinking there is sound, is like, why should I work so hard when this can do that? I think that's sort of the function of automation, right? During my year off, when I was like gonna try to make my, Alphonse Mucha, what's that series of paintings, the huge ones? The Slav Epic. I was like, I'm gonna make the Slav Epic. Step aside, Mucha, right? As soon as I saw, because I'm delusional. As soon as I saw AI, I was like, oh my God, AI can paint better than me, faster than me. I actually felt this weird paradoxical relief of like, okay, now there's no point in me doing that, because I was just trying to like work hard to look like I'm working hard. And instead it made way for like, well, okay, what would you do if you had to just say something that you can only say, right? That's not about impressing your friends. It's not about flexing your technical skill or your decades of training. It's just like, what do you want to say? Like, what do you actually want to say if you didn't have to like care about what everybody else was thinking? And so I think it opened that door a little bit.
It's the soul. You have to tell your story.
Mindy says you have to tell your story. Do you want to say it to the mic? Okay. No, it's true. It's true.
I think to that too, there's that sort of thing of I completely agree. It's like it makes your time and how you spend it and how you tell whatever is on your mind actually more valuable in that sense.
Yeah.
I think that there's one thing too that's important too for artists out there, which is like, oh, there are maybe like they're still painting and all that, and they're on their path for that. And then now this technology comes in from the side, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna incorporate it into my workflow. And that can be a good thing, that can be a bad thing. I don't know. Again, this is just how I see it. I see it as a trap in a sense, because what you end up doing is you're working out, you're building muscle, you're getting your technique down, and now you're like, oh, I'm gonna take a little bit of steroids because it's gonna give me the results faster. It's gonna give me what it is I'm building towards faster and more efficient. It's like, why not do it? It's a no-brainer, right? But the key thing is not necessarily the result and where you're going. It's also how you get there and the qualities and all that you build in the process. It's the character that you become. So the difference between somebody who's lifting weight for 10, 12 years in order to maybe reach a sub result, like the muscles are not quite as big or defined or whatever, to compare to somebody who took the shortcut, is not what you're seeing, but it's what you're not seeing. The person that took the testosterone and that, they are you become the kind of person that takes shortcuts. And once you do that once, you are more likely to do it again and again and again, and you build habit. And that's the same thing with hoarders, which is like when you see a hoarder's house, you see all the shit and all that, and the fucking bags of poo over in the corner. What you don't see the mountain of poo. You see the first poo bag, because that's where it really happened. Was when that person shit in a bag and thought it was okay to put it over in the corner. It's not the bag of the mountain of shit. It's the first one, because you decided to cross that threshold. You became that person. There was a border and you crossed it. And not saying that just because you cross it that you can't rewind, but it takes a huge amount of insight sometimes to stop up and be like, fuck, I've done this. I need to reroute now. It's hard because most people are just going on like an automated, and I do this myself too. But that's where I'm like, I can be very rigid sometimes in my thinking, and it's because I'm trying to lay out those
principles, values.
Yeah, values, and where is my map? Where it's like, because there's pitfalls along the way, and sometimes I miss out on things and potential, whatever, but I'll do it. I'll try to do it knowingly, and missing out on things where it's like, it's okay because this breaks one of my core values, or this might give me short-term things, but I want to play the longer game, and I want to be a person that can look back and look at the health benefits of good techniques, and not just like be strong for 5 years and then see a rapid declining health afterwards.
Stairway to nowhere.
Maybe we could try like interrogation mode, where we ask it and you try and answer.
Like a rapid fire.
Yeah, like who's the bad cop?
I can be the good cop. I think I'm that.
I would love that you're like, I can be the good one. You can be the bad one.
Nobody wants to. Oh, fuck, I'll take it.
You're a good cop. I was wondering, from like taking it away from AI to like the more positive side, like what are your like most influential artists right now? Like most inspirational?
There's too many to pick from, right? Everybody has something special. Gigi Caravaggio? How do you say his last name? Caravaggio. He's amazing. Victor Maury. It's a pleasure to work with you. But you're also like you're very different, and I love that there's like you prioritize some things that I don't, so I can get to see like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm not gonna do that, but I love that, or like, oh, that's really cool. I'm gonna take a little bit of that. So that's fun. And then Jesper Rising, our Danish fantasy illustrator, is amazing. Yeah, Alex Flores, with pleasure to work with him too. But a lot of the students that are up and coming now too, it's really awesome to see the new generation coming into the picture, and also just giving them the torch a bit and let them kind of like run with it for a bit.
Oh, that was actually a really good answer. I feel the same. I like to surround myself with my favorite artists and work with them as much as I can. So yeah, Esben, Evan, Audrey Benjaminson, Jesper, of course. Just to give a quick answer, because we're doing rapid fire. Recently, Alarico, I think they go by Alarico. They do these like Mediterranean slice of life buildings with like blue skies and poofy clouds, and I'm always here for that. So.
What do you do when you all talked about like doing something else than art in your life more now? So what do you do to just like go to zero in your spare time, or like other hobbies? I don't know.
Weightlifting. That's why there's all these analogies to it. We work out together too, which is fun. But it's a good way to de-stress with all that's going on. Always feels like a good cleanse. Guitar and singing. And napping on the couch. What else? I think that's pretty much it. What? Oh yeah, and we have a little puppy, so she takes a lot of time, and she's wonderful.
That's great.
For me, I work out of respect, but I don't enjoy it as much as Esben. That being said, he makes it more enjoyable, and he does push me that extra 10% that I wouldn't by myself. So that's a fantastic gym partner to have. But my hobby right now that I just dove face first in a fucking big way is Gundams, like model Gundams. I think I had like 2 when I was like 14 and then completely forgot they existed until literally 2 months ago. And so I've been catching up on 2 decades of Gundams and I've bought like 10 of them. And now I've bought a bunch of tools to alter them, paint them, all that stuff. And it is my happy place mentally right now.
Wow. Amazing. What's your go-to nasty student meal? So I'll just give you a little piece of context. It's because here at Tau we have an Instagram account called Tau Bites, and we don't know who has the account. That's the spooky thing. So it's like rye bread with cheese in the microwave, for example, or other stuff. So yeah,
nasty meals. I mean, I'm not notorious for oats. I would just eat oats all the time, like, and I'll always have. And it's not nasty, but it's just
meal.
Yeah, but I've eaten oats forever. I still do. I can eat it 3 times a day. It's nothing.
But in a moment of desperation, you've never.
Moment of desperation. I'll go back to the OG, which is oats, cocoa powder, sugar, and then go all in. And that's really good.
Wow, that's really sounds nasty.
Bro, that's nothing. I dipped Lay's chips in butter one time.
In butter?
Yeah.
No, that's...
You love butter.
I love butter. I love bread. But the only reason I know this is because one of my good friends, Chris Resolard, somehow always tells this story at parties. And I think it's like been 15 years.
Holy shit.
I have no memory of this. But supposedly at one point, a dinner I had while in college was potato chips in butter.
What was the potato chip flavor?
I think it was just plain from what he says, which I find surprising because I'm a jalapeno man, but here we are, desperate times. I mean, I'll eat anything. Okay. But if I can preach for 2 seconds, one of my regrets in life is not just eating reasonable food in school. There's no reason to just eat shit. That was a bad idea.
Okay, next question. A specific moment, like significantly influenced your artistic style, direction?
Peter Chan in second year of school here in the animation workshop. Peter Chan is a wonderful guy. I got to befriend him actually after, and we've been in close contact, writing emails back and forth. But one of the things that I was very dark fantasy before, and like very detailed, very grim, very like needs to be cool. He comes in, he's looked at everybody's portfolio, and he's like, he knows what the exact opposite of everybody's comfort zone is. So he comes in, he's like, Esben, you're doing illustration has to be in the style of Powerpuff Girls, and you need to use pink.
Ah, so mean.
And I'm like, fuck. So the first 3 days, I'm a thunder weather. Like I am not fun to be around. I'm fucking dark. I'm just like, fuck this. And then on the third day, I'm like, something starts to click. Something starts to be like, okay, I'm just letting go, accept. And I brought in pastries the next morning. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I've been in such a bad mood. And it became better. And I actually ended up really enjoying doing stylized and colorful. And it changed everything from there.
So where can we see these pieces?
I think it's on an old hard disk somewhere.
You gotta find them. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would love to see them. Shout out to Peter Chan, ex-teacher at Tao.
No way, really?
Yes.
Nice. I don't have a short answer to this, but I think I grew up on manga, so Akira Toriyama, Hiromu Arakawa, and then first massive land shift would be first Magic card I saw, Kev Walker, Giant Strength. So complete departure, like fully color, painted, all that stuff. Then Phil Hale, once I hit college, one of the first like oil paintings I saw that really blew my mind. And then Nathan Folks I did a workshop with him, and I felt like I learned how to paint overnight, like literally something clicked and I just like went up 10 levels. And then finally, just because it's like basically dictated half of my career, the first time I saw a piece by Alex Flores, and I was like, this guy merges the stylized aspect of what I like from animation and all that stuff with the painterliness and rendering that I have also come to love. So I'll say those.
Thank you. Okay, so looking in 5 years, where do you want to be career-wise and life?
Career-wise, we'll see. But life-wise, probably have a kid at that point in time, maybe 2. Jackie's like, oh, 3 kids. 5 years though, we can have 2 at that time. So we'll have some kids, and we'll hopefully have a strong base. And career-wise, probably, hopefully, a game at some point will have been released in that time. That would be nice. And still running Art Guild, being happy with that. And then we'll see. I'll be open to see what the future brings and just follow my heart with that and see what would be fun. Hopefully it could be something less job-wise. I think it would be nice to take some own steps and do that instead of always relying on an employer.
For me, to be perfectly honest, I'm at like the tail end of a plan right now instead of the formation of a new one, because it took a lot of planning and mental energy for Mindy and I to move from the States. So I feel like I'm just now getting settled. So I want to, first of all, enjoy our time here in Copenhagen, survive the first winter, see how long we want to stay.
Oh, scary.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it.
It's cozy.
I have enough introverted hobbies that I think it'll be just fine. But so I'd love to just spend some good years here, and then this is where Esben and I are very similar. I'd love to get a family started, and just keep up the good habits and stay open to what the universe has in store for me. I think I enjoy things as they come in.
Okay. Bucket list. Something you want to do in your life.
I think I've been very fortunate that a lot of them, I've been able to live out. Kids and just spend my time with you, being emotionally there for my kids. That's the big one. Being emotionally there for my kids, not working all the time, and give back to the next generations and still learn in the process too. Paint more, have more fun. I don't know. That's all. Drive some bikes.
If it wasn't suicide, I would love to try one of these squirrel suits. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where they're flying down a mountain.
So that's where you were going with that.
No, absolutely not commit suicide.
Okay.
I said if it wasn't suicide to do so, I would love to be in one of those squirrel suits.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
but I think it's extremely dangerous, extreme sport, so I probably can't. Other than that, I would love to one day have a backyard art studio with all my little Gundams and my paints and get messy in there and Yeah, I've just lived in very small apartments for the last couple decades.
Yeah. So the very last question. Yeah. What is the best advice, or what is your advice for a fulfilling life? But maybe you already answered it, but I don't know.
Relationships, human relationships. Spend time with the people you love. Build new ones. Yeah, humans. I think that's it.
I don't know if this is the case for everyone, but my base assumption is that it is that your heart is very wise and will take you where you want to go if you can dim the volume on your mind a little bit. I think all of us are really in our own heads, and the mind is a very, very powerful tool for doing the calculations necessary to make the logistics of what the heart wants possible. But I feel like it should be relegated to that use as a tool and not as the primary driver, because I think you know what you want and what you need in your heart. So try to listen to that if you can.
Can I add a last section, since that was last question?
Yep.
Can we do an email to ourselves in 5 years? So we'll do this on this podcast.
Yeah, do you want to write it right now? Or
No, I'm just gonna say it. Like, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then I'll listen to this talk again in 5 years. 5 years. At that time, I would be 38. I'm gonna be a old man. We have shift the game, Victor and I. Probably don't know if I want to do art director again. We'll see. But at that time, I hope you have some kids. You're happy, and you're painting in the basement, and and I don't know, and teaching. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of it. Like, it's very simple goals, but that's all I want.
I think we're very similar, and that's why we get along. We have similar goals, but I'll leave myself with the image of the vision I had in September that set me on my path to moving to Copenhagen. I closed my eyes and I imagined myself as the father at the head of the table at my grandma's house at a large dining table, and I'm surrounded by my family, my parents, my grandparents, and maybe my future children, and I hope that comes to pass.
Thank you so much. This has been a great episode in STN. I'm so wonderfully surprised of like how well this went, and yeah, thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable. If that's, I don't know how to say that word, but yeah, this has been very lovely, and I feel I have grown as a person as well.
It's been so fun to hear it from you guys, like just your philosophies and perspectives on everything, and it's like everybody listening is gonna just, I think, suck all this up, because it's like it's really fun to hear from you guys.
Lauritz and I, we are just like fangirls. I think we've spent many like afternoons after classes like looking at either Victor Maury or Esben Lash's work, and being like, no, this thing and so that stuff, and I'm almost feeling embarrassed now. But I just wanted to let you know, because if you only get to know it through messages or some comment, then it doesn't feel maybe like I don't know how to.
It's just a little bit reassuring, because you're where we're on the way to, and you can tell us and give us like peace of mind, like, yeah, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. Esben and I were saying, like, there's this weird thing that happens once you've been in the game long enough, is like you feel the cycle of things. Like, we see ourselves in you, and you will be where we are if you keep going. There's just no doubt about it. And so we feel like we're just a part of that cycle. Yeah. But it's awesome to hear from you guys, and you've been fantastic hosts.
Thank you so much. All right. Yeah. Now we can cut any time, and maybe the intro has already run now. So yeah, that's it.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All
Awesome.
right.
That was an amazing experience.
Absolutely. And you got 10 minutes of break.
This is a great room for it.
Right?
This is very intimate.
Yeah.
I love it.